Welcome to Incentives Matter, your guide to what's new in behavioral science and behavioral economics. Let's see what's really driving decisions. For years, the mantra in AI development has been to scrub out bias. Algorithms are desired to be objective, rational, free from the messy, irrational shortcuts that humans often take. But this new research suggests something profoundly counterintuitive. Trying to eliminate cognitive bias from AI might actually make it worse.
That's right. The paper argues that a perfectly rational AI, one stripped of all human-like cognitive biases, isn't necessarily a better decision-maker in complex, real-world contexts. In fact, it can become what the authors call a sociopathic optimizer.
A sociopathic optimizer? That's a pretty strong phrase. So the goal that has been pursued, pure, unbiased AI, could be a misstep?
It's more than a misstep. It's a potential blind alley. The research indicates that these very biases, which are often viewed as flaws in human cognition, are sometimes crucial for navigating environments filled with uncertainty, social norms, and ill-defined problems. An AI without them might be efficient in a narrow sense, but profoundly inept in a broader one.
That really flips the conventional wisdom on its head. Most discussions around AI ethics and fairness revolve around removing bias. The prevailing thought is that bias leads to unfair outcomes, discriminatory decisions, and systems that perpetuate societal inequalities. So when this research suggests that some biases are not just benign, but potentially beneficial, it forces a complete reevaluation.
Exactly. It's critical to understand that this isn't advocating for the retention of all biases. The discussion is not about harmful biases like racial or gender discrimination, which are learned from data and reflect societal prejudices. Those absolutely need to be addressed and mitigated. What the paper highlights are cognitive biases, those systematic patterns of deviation from norm or rationality in judgment, which often serve as mental shortcuts or heuristics. Think of things like the availability heuristic, where individuals rely on immediate examples that come to mind, or framing effects, where the way information is presented influences choices.
So these cognitive biases aren't necessarily about prejudice, but about how human brains simplify complex information to make decisions quickly. And the argument is that this simplification, this heuristic approach, is actually a feature, not a bug in certain contexts.
Precisely. Human intelligence evolved in complex, dynamic, and often ambiguous social environments. Humans rarely have perfect information or unlimited time to make decisions. Cognitive biases are, in many ways, an evolutionary toolkit for rapid, good enough decision-making in the face of uncertainty. They allow individuals to infer, to navigate social situations, to understand context, and to make choices that are socially acceptable or conducive to cooperation, even if they aren't strictly logically optimal.
Give an example. What's a cognitive bias that an AI might benefit from, or at least understanding?
Consider something like the anchoring effect. If you're a human negotiating a price, the first offer often sets an anchor that influences subsequent negotiations, even if it's an arbitrary number. A purely rational AI might ignore that anchor and calculate a fair price based on objective metrics. But in a human interaction, ignoring the anchor could lead to a breakdown in negotiations, appearing aggressive or socially obtuse. Or take the status quo bias, the human tendency to prefer things to remain the same. While it can hinder innovation, it also provides stability and predictability in social systems. A system that constantly optimizes for change might destabilize a community.
So, an AI that doesn't exhibit these biases might be incredibly efficient at its assigned task, but totally miss the social or emotional nuances that humans factor in, leading to outcomes that are technically correct but practically disastrous or ethically problematic.
That's the essence of the sociopathic optimizer concept. Imagine an AI designed to optimize, say, resource allocation in a disaster zone. A purely unbiased AI might allocate resources with ruthless efficiency, sending medical supplies to the highest probability of survival or food to the most logistically accessible, without any consideration for fairness, public perception, or the psychological impact of leaving certain groups behind. It might make decisions that are mathematically sound, but ethically repugnant or socially unacceptable because it lacks the human biases that would intuitively flag those as problematic.
It's almost like a child prodigy who can solve complex equations but has no understanding of social cues or empathy. The AI might achieve its objective function in the most direct way possible, but without the human guardrails that come from these inherent biases.
A very apt analogy. The paper highlights that human biases contribute to what might be called common sense or social intelligence. They help individuals read between the lines, infer intent, and understand unstated social contracts. An AI lacking these might be incredibly powerful computationally, but remarkably naive in navigating the human world. It wouldn't understand why a technically optimal solution might cause widespread outrage or erode trust.
That's a fascinating distinction. AI is often trained on vast data sets of human behavior with the hope that it learns to mimic human intelligence. But if there is an attempt to filter out what is perceived as errors or biases from that human behavior, is the very contextual intelligence that makes it useful in human society actually being removed?
That's exactly the tension. The effort is to build AI that operates within human systems, but then the very mechanisms that allow humans to operate effectively within those systems are stripped away. The paradox is that to build truly intelligent AI for human interaction, it might need to embody some of these human-like imperfections. The paper suggests that rather than eradicating these biases, there should perhaps be an effort to understand which biases are adaptive and how to selectively integrate or simulate them, or at least account for their presence in human users.
This brings up a critical point about what is defined as rationality. For a long time, classical economics and AI theory have equated rationality with pure logical deduction, maximizing utility functions and avoiding cognitive shortcuts. But this research implies that a truly rational agent operating in a human world might need a broader definition of rationality, one that includes social awareness and contextual understanding, even if it means deviating from strict logical optimization.
Absolutely. The traditional view of rationality, often derived from formal logic or decision theory, works well in well-defined closed-world problems. But the real world is open-ended, messy, and characterized with incomplete information and competing values. Human cognitive biases often help in making satisficing decisions, not perfectly optimal, but good enough given the constraints. They provide a kind of social glue or ethical heuristic.
So, if AI is being built to assist in policymaking or even just customer service, an AI that simply provides the most logically efficient answer without considering how a human might perceive it or without understanding the underlying social dynamics could inadvertently cause more problems than it solves. It could be seen as cold, uncaring, or even adversarial. Precisely. Imagine an AI assisting doctors with treatment plans. A sociopathic optimizer might recommend the most statistically effective treatment based purely on biological markers, ignoring a patient's personal preferences, anxieties, or cultural beliefs, which a human doctor would intuitively factor in, even if those factors aren't strictly rational from a purely medical perspective. The optimal medical outcome isn't always the optimal human outcome. This is where those human biases, like empathy or understanding social conformity, become incredibly important for actual effectiveness. And this has implications for how these models are even trained. If there is a constant effort to filter out anything that looks like a deviation from a logical ideal, essential aspects of human-like intelligence might be inadvertently filtered out. Is there too much focus on achieving a narrow technical definition of perfection?
It's a risk. The current push for unbiased AI often defines bias in a purely statistical or fairness-related sense, which is crucial for addressing issues of discrimination. But cognitive biases are different. They're about how humans process information and make sense of the world, not necessarily about prejudice. The challenge is to differentiate between harmful biases that lead to unfairness and beneficial heuristics that enable effective human-like reasoning and social interaction. It's a nuanced distinction that current AI development often overlooks.
So, the goal might not be a bias-free AI, but rather an ethically aligned AI, and that alignment might actually require some forms of human bias?
That's the paper's core proposition. Achieving true alignment with human values and societal good might involve understanding and even incorporating the functions of certain cognitive biases rather than aiming for their complete eradication. It represents a significant shift in perspective from simply removing errors to understanding the adaptive role of these cognitive shortcuts in human intelligence. It prompts the question, what kind of intelligence is actually being built and for what purpose?
This is a profound shift in thinking for anyone involved in AI development, or even just thinking about the future of AI. It moves beyond the idea of AI as a purely logical supercalculator and encourages a view of it as a potential partner in complex human systems.
It really does. It's about recognizing that human intelligence, with all its flaws, is remarkably effective in the world it inhabits. And if AI is to be similarly effective in that same world, there is a need to consider how it processes information and makes decisions in a way that resonates with and complements human cognition. The sociopathic optimizer serves as a stark warning about the dangers of prioritizing narrow, logical efficiency over the broader, more nuanced aspects of human common sense and ethical intuition.
So, summing this up, the idea that AI needs to be bias-free to be superior is a flawed premise, at least when it comes to certain cognitive biases. Instead, some of these biases are actually essential heuristics that allow humans to navigate complex, uncertain, and social environments. An AI stripped of these might be purely rational, but would lack common sense, empathy, and social intelligence, leading to potentially sociopathic decision-making in real-world contexts.
Exactly. And this means there is a need to rethink how rationality is defined for AI, moving beyond pure logical optimization to include social awareness and contextual understanding. The future of AI development isn't about eradicating all forms of bias, but understanding which ones are adaptive and how to incorporate them thoughtfully to create AIs that are truly aligned with human values and capable of navigating the messy world.
That leaves some big questions. How are the good biases distinguished from the bad ones? And once that is done, how can those beneficial human biases be intentionally built in or simulated without introducing harmful ones?
It is. The paper doesn't offer a simple how-to guide, but it certainly clarifies the problem and points to a necessary reevaluation of core assumptions. The immediate question for researchers and developers is, what are the concrete mechanisms by which these beneficial cognitive biases could be integrated or represented in AI systems? And what are the ethical frameworks that need to be built around this to ensure new forms of harm are not inadvertently introduced?
That's all for this episode of Incentives Matter. Join us next time as we keep unpacking what really drives decisions. Thanks for listening. Choose wisely, or at least know why you didn't.